So hello, everyone. I'll just give you a minute to all get into the session and then we will start. The numbers keep jumping in 5, so wait for it to level off here. All right. Once again, I'm Brianne O'Reilly with Petrol MI, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our first ever pivot panel. This panel is 6 of your fellow peers who have all established careers in oil and gas and who've all made successful pivots into other areas. We'll have about an hour to hear from all 6 of them, and this will be more of a highlight reel of each of their stories. Immediately following the panel discussion, you'll be invited to join the panelist of your choice in a breakout room for an informal Q&A session where you can get more into the specifics and pick their brains on how they did it. The moderator for this session is Bimal Mehta from JWN Energy, and we're pleased to have him here and thrilled to have JWN as our media sponsor. As Senior Vice President, Energy Intelligence for JWN Energy, Bimal leads the group's efforts in the areas of business intelligence and strategic insight. He has over 25 years of experience across multiple industries, including oil and gas, mining, and technology. He brings a breadth of experience in the areas of market intelligence, business strategy, digital transformation, and sustainability. Bimal, I will pass it over to you now.
Great, thanks, Brianne. Hi, everyone. I'm Bimal Mehta, and really excited to be a part of this panel. Pivots are so critical at any stage of your career. This is quite personal for me as well. I was actually laid off about 8 years ago, about this time 8 years ago, and had the same sorts of issues and questions about what do you do next? How do you make that next leap? Where do you go? How do you reinvent yourself? And just wanted to thank Energy Safety Canada, Petrol MI, and Calgary Economic Development, because this is a really, really important topic, and I'm glad they've spent a couple days sort of focusing on this. So while I set this up, I'm going to ask Brianne to put up the survey question. That'll give us a little bit more insight of where to take today's conversation. So please tell us, what is the next step for your career? And while that's up there for a couple seconds, I'm going to continue with just my opening remarks here. So today you're going to hear from 6 professionals that have started their careers in the oil and gas sector. Some of them are still there doing other things. Others have made a full pivot completely away from the industry. I think what I love about this is there's just a breadth of stories. We're going to give each of them a chance to sort of share a little bit more about what they were doing, what they're doing now, and kind of provide a little bit of advice of what that journey looks like as you're sort of starting to scope out where you're heading next. So Brianne, do you want to close the poll and see what's the next step of most people's careers here?
So I've shared the results there. You guys see them?
All right. So 60% almost are looking to find a job outside of the industry. 25% within the industry, and then about 17% looking at some form of consulting or starting your own business. Probably not a big surprise. I think there's a lot that goes into consulting or starting your own. I think what's nice about today's panel is you're going to get a chance to see the full breadth of each one of these options, and should give you a sense as to where to perhaps take your career. I should remind you that 11:30 we'll be into those breakout sessions, and you'll get a chance to have some one-on-one time in a breakout room with these 6 leaders to be able to ask your questions and be able to pick their brain directly. So with that, why don't I introduce our first panelist? It's Ross Alger. He's the founder and CEO of Confluence Distilling. And Ross, the two questions for you is, can you share a little bit about where you were before and kind of what your transition looked like and kind of what you're doing now?
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Bimal. So I obviously run Confluence Distilling now, but in my previous life, I was a mechanical engineer in the oil and gas sector. I started my career, I don't even know when, 2012-ish, 10, 11, coming out of university from UBC. And I started working at AP Dynamics, which is a oil and gas consulting company where I was a vibration specialist. So I measured and assessed vibration data on large oil and gas rotating equipment. So we focused on trying to maintain and extend the life of critical oil and gas equipment. And so my job was flying out to sites across Western Canada, measuring vibration, coming back to the office, analyzing it, and making recommendations for our clients. I did that for 7 or 8 years, and had a small team under myself, and worked on that and enjoyed it. It was a lot of exciting engineering work, which I'm very proud of. But with kind of a little bit of the writing on the wall, and also enjoying libations as much as I do, I thought there was an opportunity in Calgary, especially in 2014. There was a law that changed that allowed craft distilling and brewing to exist, where before that it was not legal to exist. You had to create a distillery that could produce a giant, like 100,000 hectoliters worth of product every year, and so that was kind of a huge barrier to entry, which would require like dozens of millions of dollars of startup. But after 2014, that changed, following the kind of craft initiatives in the United States, and with coffee first, and then in spirits and beer. So Alberta followed suit, allowed small craft distilleries to exist. There was a big market opportunity there. In 2014, I was not smart enough or old enough or anything like that to be able to start a distillery. But as the years passed, I noticed that there was very few distilleries that were opening in Calgary. And so by 2018, I was a little bit more experienced and knowledgeable, and again noticed that there was very few distilleries in Alberta and in Calgary. So I took it upon myself to do some training. See the world. Went to Italy a few times to consume some alcoholic products to increase my breadth of knowledge, and then spent my off hours learning to distill. I had always been distilling as a hobby illegally in my backyard, but I turned basically my kitchen into a distillery for a year, making recipes, learning how to distill as more of a professional basis than a hobby basis. And then at the end of 2018, or in the middle of 2018, I quit my job, and by the end of the year, November 30th, 2018, we opened up, and we've been operating for just over 2 years now, and things seem to be going well. COVID was a little bit of a hit, but we were able to make some hand sanitizer in the first month, which helped a little bit, but still reeling a bit from lack of bars being open. But beyond that, people seem to be drinking a lot at home, which is good. So happy to be in distilling and having an ability to have a drink at the end of a long day. So
great. Well, thank you, Ross. That was a fantastic overview.
thanks.
We're gonna now move to our next panelist, who is Jessica Shimlick, who's the CEO and founder of Highwood Emissions Management. And Jessica, same two questions for you. Kind of tell us a little bit about your journey. Where were you before, and kind of what are you doing now, and kind of how did that transition go?
Absolutely. Thanks, Bimal, and thanks everyone for the opportunity to chat. I'm really excited about the breakout sessions afterwards. So I started my career about 15 years ago. We were on just the beginnings of the recession back in the mid 2000s, and early in my career, I was working as a drilling engineer for a large oil and gas company. And I saw, you know, in the 2008 downturn, most of my colleagues lose their job or take demotions or these sorts of things. And so I started my career with this gratitude that, you know, I was happy to have a job and I should be grateful to have a job. And all of that was true. And I think I took that throughout my career for the next about decade or so, where I did a bunch of different roles and had a bunch of different opportunities within this big oil and gas company. Fast forward about 10 years and, you know, staring another recession down, you know, down the barrel back in the 2017-18 years. And I was scared, and I saw the writing on the wall that, you know, there was going to be another big layoff that was happening at this large oil and gas company. And I felt like I had built my entire career working at this company, and I felt that I couldn't do anything else, that was my only skill set that I had. And that was a really scary thought for me. And so I started to challenge myself and said, okay, if this layoff is real, what is, you know, what are my skill sets and what do I have to offer? And what do I want to do as well too? I don't think you're ever too old to challenge yourself and say, what do I want to be when you grow up? Even if you're, you know, in your 30s or 40s or 50s, it doesn't matter, because we can all change and make and make our life our own destiny. And so I decided in my early 30s to go back to school while working full time and really reevaluate what I wanted to do. And so I decided then that I wanted to be a business owner. And going back to school and getting my master's degree really helped me sort of understand that. And I started to realize that maybe I had other skills. Maybe I wasn't just a one-trick pony and I could do other things. And so I made this goal that I was going to start my own business, and it was a winding path. I ended up leaving the large organization that I had and joined a government agency to round out my skill set, because I knew at that point I wasn't ready to start my own business. And all of a sudden I went into this new job and I was like, wow, I can do this. Sure, I'm learning, but I can do this. And it was a really cool realization. Fast forward a couple of years, and I actually just started my own business about 6 months ago. So we officially launched in September of 2020, amid the middle of a global pandemic. It's never the right time. Launching a business in COVID is not the right time. But you know what? Never is it going to be the right time. And so I decided that that is what I wanted to do. And so we've been in operation about 6 months. We have already 4 employees, which is super exciting. And we're just growing and expanding and seeing what we can do. So long story short, have that hard conversation with yourself. What do you want to do when you grow up? Seek out mentors, develop a roadmap, and work really hard to achieve that. And so what I have to realize now is that I'm okay. I'm okay with the unknown. I'm okay with maybe not understanding what life is going to be like in 6 months, but I know I'm on a journey that I believe in. And so, yeah, now we're doing it. So that's my journey, and thanks for the opportunity to discuss it.
Great, thanks, Jessica. That's yeah, you're right. There's never a good time, and it's fantastic to see that early success. Your team's doing some really critical work. Our next speaker today is Nick Kendrick, who's the technical analyst and education specialist with Iron and Earth. And Nick, over to you again. The same 2 questions, kind of a little bit about your journey and kind of where you are now.
Thank you. Great story, Ross and Jessica. Really like hearing these. So my story started in Nova Scotia. That's where I was born and raised. And I graduated with a criminology degree that I realized near the end that I really didn't want to be involved with, but you have to see it through when you get to that stage. So I had a whole bunch of student debt, didn't know what I was going to do. So my buddy and I weren't happy with our current jobs and everything. So we quit our jobs and just drove to Alberta in his Volkswagen and started calling people that we happen to know. And this is back in 2013. So oil and gas was going strong. Everybody we talked to said, you know, all you have to do is, you know, show up to work every day and you're going to find a job. So anyway, I did. I worked for a small company that used to accept oil field waste. And I just started as an operator. I really enjoyed it, but I was looking for a bigger challenge. So I transferred within the company to a large oil sands mine in Fort McMurray and started at a new plant and worked my way up until I was a senior control room operator there. So this is a really good job, but by this time, oil and gas prices were falling. I've been watching people around me get laid off time and time again. And while I was feeling pretty secure, I was thinking more long-term, like, is this, I'm okay right now, but there's people getting laid off that have been working in the industry for 20 years. So decided to make a change. I applied to a master's program at the University of Calgary called Sustainable Energy Development. It's a master's of science program that really deals with both oil and gas and renewables and just sustainability in general. So that was really good for me because I was able to take what I knew, but also try to pivot into something different. So it was a nice little baby step. There's still the option to go back to oil and gas, but also open up a lot of doors to go more the sustainability route. So after graduating from that program, again, the economy wasn't doing too hot. I found a position teaching elementary and junior high kids about sustainability, and I was working about 10 hours a week. It wasn't great, but I'm so glad I took that opportunity because that got me on with a nonprofit that gave me more of a full-time responsibility. And through that position, I met the people I'm working with now called Green Planet Energy Analytics. My affiliation with Iron and Earth is actually, I'm more of a spokesperson for what the work that they do, and they help support people like me that worked in oil and gas and try to help them convert their skill sets to work in renewable energy. So ever since I've been working with Green Planet full time, we're a project management company that specializes in clean energy. So we have done some pretty major solar projects, sustainable food production, biomass, just a little bit of everything. We're a small time operation, but with a wide scope of projects. So it's just been really exciting. And I was able to just kind of pivot one step at a time to get to where I wanted to be in the end. So it's been really great.
Great. Thank you, Nick. It's really interesting to hear that story. And yeah, there's a lot of folks that got in their car and truck and drove across the country to come here and make the most out of the province. So no, great story. Our next speaker is Greg Maidman. He's a project manager with Carbon Management Canada Research Institutes, and looking forward to hearing your story.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Bimal. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody about the variety of jobs I've had so far. I started out in 04, 05, so I've got to work through 3 different downturns, 04, 08, somewhere in there, and then 2013, 14, 15, and then this last one, 18, 19, which it's been very exciting and very stressful at the same time. I started working for a large company in geophysics. Just at that time, we were searching for fluvial channels in Bighorn Deep Gas Basin, and it became pretty evident in sort of that first 8 years of my career that there wasn't a lot of amalgamation of technical understandings. There wasn't a lot of people that understood where everybody else's jobs crossed over. So I kind of took it on myself to be that person, that middleman, to be able to combine geology with petrophysics, with geophysics, with reservoir engineering, so that we could operate more efficiently as a team. So we could be that sort of expert area in exploration for other people to come and attempt to duplicate, and that was pretty awesome. And right in the midst of my second downturn there in 2013, I had an opportunity to go lead an exploration team for a smaller company, which was very exciting and quite fun. And that again was based on the ability to combine our technical understandings, to combine a whole bunch of different concentrations to move the company forward in the Montney and in some new plays, the Duvernay, the Horn River at that time, which, I mean, we all know how that turned out economically, but at the time it was really fun and exciting. And the writing was sort of on the wall at that point, and at the end of 2014, 2015, that everyone was struggling. They were shutting down shop. So I took a bit of a demotion and jumped to a middle level company as a geophysicist. But the last company there was very forward thinking, and they were very excited about innovation. And they were very excited at figuring out the best ways to combine completions with drilling, with geology. Where are those areas of expertise that aren't talking to each other to make sure we can improve? And that's kind of where I inserted myself, and I jumped at the opportunity to lead the innovation team there. And then in that last downturn in 2018 there, again, writing was on the wall. I wasn't going to make it through. So I was just like Nick mentioned, was looking for something a little more sustainable. I wanted to understand how to get out of the ups and downs, but continue to use the skill set. And it's quite impressive, the resilience of reservoir engineers, geologists, geophysicists. We've all operated as professional problem solvers up to this point, and our skills are highly transferable everywhere. Understanding that and understanding how we fit all together is I don't know, makes it easy to step out and look at other challenges. So I had this opportunity to initially I was going to go teach, be a sessional instructor at U of C, and got in touch with one of my old university professors, Dr. Don Lawton, and based on my experience and some of the previous technical data that I'd worked on from a bunch of different concentrations, got opportunity to work at CMC, Carbon Management Canada. So we're trying to figure out the best way to sequester CO2, whether it's EOR or just straight geological sequestration. It's all the same transferable skill sets as oil and gas. We're still dealing with wells. We're still dealing with pressure and temperature gauges. We're still dealing with surface seismic. So that translation was exciting, and it was good to be able to use that sort of myriad of different technical understandings to support this company. That's it. Thanks, Bilal.
Great. Well, no, thank you, Greg. That's a great story. So our next panelist actually comes to us, I guess, from the Millennium Falcon today. It's John Mora, who's the software development manager with Blackline Safety. John, over to you.
Thank you. Amazing story so far. And Chewbacca is going to distract me, so I'll do my best not to listen to him. But I lead the software group at a tech company in Calgary now, overseeing a group of 60 people, and I don't know how many contractors and consultants over 11 countries. And I started back in Brazil a number of years ago when I thought it was a good idea to have a mathematics bachelor degree. That was a great idea for this high school kid that was having straight A's in math, and I said, okay, that's what I should be doing. I was so wrong. And that was my first pivot, because trying to find an internship in mathematics, that's not that easy, unless I wanted to go into insurance, and that was not me. So from there, I landed on learning to program and doing some techie stuff. And imagine that was before Google, before the internet, and before a lot of things. My beard would be all white if I still let that grow. 7 years working on the main television in Brazil, building some cool IT systems that would manage everything they had. I said, okay, I'm really not keen on having bosses and everything. And then again, I thought 20-something, I know everything. The opposite of Jessica's story. I know everything. I'm ready to be my own boss and have my own company. Again, I think I was wrong. Now, in retrospective, of course, but there was a massive learning and growth to me. For 7 years, I was my own. I started consulting with a partner, and at some point I had 13 employees. So for us, it was massive. I was making money out of the company and everything. It was a successful company, but then halfway through, me and my wife, we said, yeah, living in a big city like Rio has a lot of problems. It's wandering in some aspects, but we really want to be out of the big cities. But both our jobs were not jobs or business you could find in a small city. Like I wish I could just live out of Jasper, and which now I can if I could afford. That's a different question though. And then we said, okay, so what do we do? How we get out of big cities? And at that point, after some retrospective in our lives, we said to each other, we can choose any country, any city in the world, really. Like, what's tying us here other than visas and bureaucracy? So let's have a plan. Let's select where we want to go and go. Build the plan and build that. So that was a 5-year process. So don't think there was a light decision. That involved a career change as well. Again, so I had to sell my business to my partner. And once we decided Calgary, because we came here, we saw the mountains and we said, okay, this is what I want to do. And for the ones that think Calgary is a big city, it's not, sorry. And that has, my kids live in a suburb, they have this vibe that they're living like the 3 communities around ours, and that's it. So that's the city they know, and that's what we wanted. But I was not in oil and gas, and some people told me back then, and I think this was around 2005, the city was booming, everything was great, but they said, either you're a goalie on hockey, and me coming from Brazil, no way, or you play golf. And I was like, I don't play golf, because you need those 2 things to break into oil and gas, and that's where the money is. And I was like, okay, so if I don't have the 2 Gs, how I'm going to break into the oil and gas when I get there? So I better have an oil and gas job in Brazil. So that's me jumping from the tech side into oil and gas. Brazil has 1 company that's massive. I think last quarter they had $6 billion profit because they're doing poorly. Last quarter, $6 billion profit. So I got the job at Petrobras because I wanted to be there for the 3 years that I had remaining on my plan before I moved to Canada. So long story short, I get to Canada. At least I could say, hey, I have oil and gas experience. I started looking for oil and gas jobs, but it was really hard to break into the oil and gas. I was lucky to get a job in a tech company that was called Smart Technologies, still called Smart Technologies, but was very proud of that. And I joined the company. I was there for a few years, working my way into oil and gas. Not because Smart was not great, but oil and gas paid better. I envied people having Friday offs and all the benefits, and I kind of wanted that as well. Again, I didn't know what I was signing up for exactly, but I did want to get there. And I did. I was invited to build a manufacturing plant for 1 company making pipes out of Calgary. And there was nothing IT related, not software related. I was actually discussing with a vendor that would be the same vendor that does the bodies for intercontinental missiles. And I had to have FBI clearance to be able to talk to them. And I was like, I'm excited about this new world. And guess what? This was 2013. So gets 2014, what happens with oil and gas? That explosion behind Falcon Millennium, you don't see from inside the cockpit. And round 5 of layoffs in the company, we are down to 30% of employees. My group was hit hard. At this time, I was being a project manager. So when I came to Calgary, I think Greg spoke about demotion and moving sideways. I've done that often in my career because you need to do those things to be able to move forward sometimes. And when I came to Calgary, I became kind of a junior PM and then grew from there. Like in 2 years, I was senior again. That was fine. And I was leading the PM group there, and PMs are usually overhead. So I was impressed that my group survived that long. But I tapped into my network, and I had about 10 people from Smart into this other company. And I said, hey, I'm looking. And they said, hey, we're looking for someone like you. Let's chat. And I started the conversation same day I was laid off. And I believe 4 weeks later, I was starting my first day there. I was lucky because the company I joined thought that this 2014 thing is a 1-2 month downturn. So they were still hiring. 2 months in, they were laying off again. And I was like, what I'm doing with my life? But my wife told me, no, hang on, tighten your seatbelt, ride this through. It's not the best time to be ship off to something else because you may be getting into something even worse. So just go day by day. And so I done, and I survived that part, and the company was doing great. But then there's 2015, 2016, and I keep saying, okay, I think I'm done with oil and gas. I need to get my plan out. And either I control my destiny again, which I like doing, or I let someone else control. And then that's me again. Okay, let's create the plan. Let's go over. I don't want just to be a PM again, because if there are layoffs happening and oil and gas is going to affect the entire city, and if I'm working on Tim Hortons, I'm going to suffer as well. So I said, maybe I should go back to my roots, software development. And then I start honing my skills, getting some certifications, doing my side hobbies, and then looking for those jobs. And here I am. So that's kind of my journey. Essentially, I always try not to be defined by the job I'm doing, but the value I'm bringing to the table. And that's kind of it. I think I'll save something for later. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, but I'm probably
No,
done.
that's fantastic, Sean. I think what that underlies is that the career path doesn't have to be linear, doesn't have to be a straight line, and can sometimes go in a lot of different directions as you move through. It's fantastic. Our sixth panelist today is Eva Choi. She's the co-founder and CEO of the Chocolate Lab. So we're thrilled to have you here as well, Eva. Again, the same questions around kind of where were you before in the oil and gas sector, and then kind of what does your journey look like and where you at now?
Yeah, mine starts with Nick. I'm from the East Coast too. I grew up in New Brunswick. And so when I came out to Calgary in 2003, I was an environmental engineer. I had this background in water and wastewater. And I was ready and set to, fix the planet. And I arrived in Calgary and there were no environmental jobs. So as a geological engineer, I started doing the equivalent of flipping burgers in our industry, which is logging core. And then I worked my way into doing drilling, sitting on well sites, doing, drilling geology. And then I worked my way into a situation where I was actually working in a consulting firm. And then I got to learn all about the different clients and different pieces, and using my knowledge about geology and all science and all earth science to kind of, leverage my way into these really cool projects. Eventually, I ended up at a large oil and gas corporation, and I think it was 2014 or 2015, I was laid off while I was on mat leave with my third. And when you wrap your identity in your career, and it becomes a very difficult transition when you're not the one who makes the choice to end a working relationship. So I took it pretty hard, but my husband had been in his about to take a chocolatiering course, and he's like, asking me, he's like, is this the right time to do it? I'm like, I'm suffering from postpartum, I'm miserable, and I'm struggling. So at least one of us should be happy, and let's eat all the outtakes. Let's go, right? And he had a certain Belgian chocolatier offer him an internship, and within 2 weeks, he's like, I'm quitting. I'm like, quitting? What's happening? Like, you have so much to learn. Like, why would you do this? And he's like, I've got this concept and this idea, and I don't know if I can do the administrative piece, but what I want to do is something really creative and do something related to chocolate for our generation. He's like, I don't want to make grandpa's chocolates. I want to make something that is new and fun. And I think that with social media being what it is, and us being a very visual kind of people, we could actually leverage social media to kind of, push something along. He's like, do you have any expertise in administration? I was like, well, I've run drilling projects and I've run lab programs, and yeah, I think I could do this. He's like, how big were your budgets? I'm like, millions? I think I can handle your chocolate shop. So I come to the realization that I wasn't actually committed. My husband had this super idea, and I was just, complaining, whining, going like, well, these are all the things that are wrong. And then I turned it around. I was like, okay, if anyone's got somebody's back, we have each other's back. And so I just pushed all my chips into the table. I'm all in, right? There's no escaping this. I'm not out. I have committed to creating this chocolate company with my husband. And that's when all the magic started happening. Um, 5 years later, we've won 18 international chocolate awards. We won a packaging design award. We're making bean to bar chocolate, as well as doing all these extraordinary artisan bonbons. And we get to fuse all of the skill sets that we've had in life that have nothing to do with how I identified myself previously. So once upon a time, I was a makeup artist. My husband's also a professional photographer. He's a statistician and author. We have just so many skill sets to kind of run everything. And there's only two of us that own our company, like no investors. And we just moved into a new factory in July in the middle of a global pandemic. And everything is cool and we're okay. And all of the doomsday engineering, catastrophic thinking and factors of safety, I didn't have to pull any pins. But I certainly had to go through the process of understanding why I was feeling all these things, because this is what you're built to do in your education and in your work. And now I have the opportunity to create a culture of kindness and generosity, which is very different than the culture that I'm used to from large oil and gas corporations. I get to lead a team of extraordinary artists and a great fulfillment team, and inspire them and motivate them every day to knock our goals out of the park. That's where I was, and this is where I am.
Great. Well, that's an awesome story. So, well, thank you, and thanks to all of you for that fantastic opening, and kind of plants the seeds for a whole bunch of different conversations. There is a question online, but I'll come to that one just in a minute. I really want to start with was maybe talking about the value of a network. All of you have had various journeys, but maybe if you could, and I don't have to call it all of you, but I'm going to put the question out there, and then whoever wants to pop up, please chime in. But when you're going through this career transition, there's a lot of value at times in just getting access to more ideas, more people that can help you take your idea to the next level, or help open doors to help you get that next job. Can any of you kind of tell a little bit about kind of how you leveraged your network as you went through these major transitions in your life? Who wants to go first? Greg, I saw you nodding there. I might call on you first, then perhaps, and I'll call on others in a moment. But it doesn't have to be all six of you. I've got lots of questions. I'll make sure I mix it up a little bit. But Greg, do you want to hit that one?
Yeah, for sure. I think every single one of my jobs has been based off me leveraging my network. People that speak on your behalf are of their weight in gold, really, right? That speaks to your credibility much better than a resume, much better than the work you've done to the past. Is people that are working at the company you want to go to, putting their name beside yours for looking for a new job. I know everybody. I mean, right now it's really nice to see that there's a lot of postings downtown, and I know for a fact that all those internal HR groups are going to look and take the resumes that come across their desk internally before they're going to take any of the external posts. So if you can leverage your network, if you can get a friend of a friend of a friend to come by and drop your resume off, that gets you to the top of the pile. That's what friends are for. That's what your network's for. That's what your fellow professionals are for, is to use that. And nepotism is real. there's nothing wrong with doing and using the skills and the people around you to move forward. And it's invaluable. It's invaluable.
Yeah, no, fantastic point. Anyone else want to kind of top up on that? Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Greg there. It's really important to leverage your network. When I first decided I wanted to start my own business, I was really scared to even say it out loud. I want to start my own business. I want to work doing emissions management. And I started saying it just to a few of the people in my network, and it was amazing what happened. The support, hey, I know somebody who I can introduce you. I know somebody who just started a business. I know, a company who might be looking for emissions management support. And all of a sudden, I couldn't deny what I wanted to do anymore because, my network sort of rallied around me, and I realized the importance and value of it. I can't do anything alone. Nobody can. And so, yeah, just reiterate the importance of that.
Oh, that's great. There is a question online that I'd love to pose to those of you that have either started a business, even contemplated a business, and then chose not to, which is, starting a business comes with a lot of complexity. It's cash flow dilutive at a time when every dollar counts and you're trying to get food on the table. It's a big risk, which can be terrifying. One thing and you're trying to figure out what is that business idea because there's a million other things you don't know. There's a lot of reasons not to do business. And yet when people do it, they love it, they jump into it. The person who wrote here, the question says, the list goes on and terrifies me. So maybe I'll pop this one out there. And I'd love to hear both sides of this. Those of you that looked at the same data and chose to go into business, and those of you that looked at the same situation and said, you know what, I'm going to go get a job. Maybe Ross, I'm going to call on you first. I saw your hand up there. Do you want to take that one first, and then I'll go around. And I might tap more of you on this one, just because it's a really important question, particularly in this Calgary environment.
For sure. I mean, I think that I relate to this a lot. I mean, I went from a good engineering job that paid me comfortably to a job where I had no idea how it was going to be funded. So to answer the older question about the network leveraging, one of the advantages of Calgary that's really good is that there's a lot of wealth. And so not only do we have an incredible network of people that can help us in advice, but even in investment. So I wasn't able to start this project on my own. So I had to have connections to wealth that would invest into my project. And that's where it all, like, being able to see that there was a timeline and a pathway towards success, seeing that, like looking at my burn rate of cash every month because I wouldn't have a paying job for a year, understanding those risks and concepts. I think, I did engineering consulting on the side for the first year to pay for my pay for my distillery. And now I basically work for like minimum wage almost for a while, and that's hopefully building up and up and up. But it is a terrifying thing. You have to be careful. I'm thankful not to have kids yet, so I don't have those bills that I necessarily have to pay, and my parents live here, so I can move back into their basement if everything goes poorly. So I'm very lucky to have a strong network that I can build off of. But I mean, there's a lot of risks there, but there's always a network to fall back on. I mean, hopefully for most people, there's a little bit of a network and opportunities. And Calgary does have a lot of opportunities and strengths and things that you can fall back on if there is an issue. We don't live in America where we don't have healthcare, things like that. If it really goes badly, there's always a backup. That's not necessarily a great answer, or positive answer, but that was my thoughts.
Great. Maybe I'm gonna open this up to someone that chose the other path, which is you looked at the data and said, I'm gonna go and find work, or done a little bit of both. Nick, do you mind taking that one and just sort of walk through the process from your perspective, kind of how you looked at the situation, kind of where yeah.
For sure. So I would say I'm relatively on the early stages of my path of transitioning my career still. So for me, I'll be honest, I didn't even consider starting up my own business because I'm still in the learning stage as far as I'm concerned. So but I was leveraging my network, it's been repeated a few times. I saw in the questions somebody mentioned that they're an introvert. I'm an introvert as well, and this isn't, when I go networking, I'm not very good at going into a big room and talking to a whole bunch of people, but I make sure that I have strong relationships with the people I know, and that's always got me to the next stage of my career every time. So I've been very fortunate that way to be supported by the people that know me and know what I can provide. So yeah, but right now, big reason why I got into the education work was actually so I could learn. I mean, the old adage, the best way to learn is to teach. I'm totally taking advantage of that right now. I'm like writing education pieces on renewable energies projects that I've never worked on before, but now I'm becoming more and more well versed. So I'm just using that as a mutually beneficial opportunity to propel my path forward. And then maybe someday I'll look at opening up my own business. But as of right now, I'm still just trying to be a sponge.
Great. I'm gonna make one more pivot here. There's a question around back to networks, and you know, a lot of folks are wondering, you know, my network that's still working are being tapped out. They're probably getting pinged 100 times a day on LinkedIn. You know, it can be exhausting for the people in the network, the people that are still working. Any advice on how do you deal with that overwhelmed network that's even having concerns about their own jobs, and what's the best way to tap into your network while still being respectful to those other issues? John, I haven't called on you yet. Any advice? Because I'm sure you're getting calls all the time from people looking for work at Blackline.
Yeah, not sure if that's good advice, but I'll say what I do and how I approach this is, one, I always have the mindset that I'm never going to ask something out of my network. I agree but disagree with some people. It's not that I'm not really asking, but it's how you frame the thing, how you frame your ask. So I'm just don't ask, hey, can you find me a job? But I may ask for help on, what do you think I should be doing? Can you give me some advice? That's how someone told me, I think you should learn Java. And I went and learned Java. And I always try to frame in a way that I'm bringing value to that person as well. If nothing else, hey, let me pay you a coffee because I want to hear what you have to say about this. I'm asking for something, but that's not framed as asking for something. Like I'm going to eat coffee with someone, they're going to give me advice, and I'm never going to ask someone for a job. But I may let them know, hey, I'm looking for a job. If you hear about something, or if you want to make the introduction, or I done things like, in particular for me, that was challenging, because if you grew in Calgary and you went to college in Calgary, you have a life history in Calgary and your network. I came here brand new and knew literally anyone in Calgary. So I had to build that network, and you cannot just tap on people. You need to give something back to your network as well. So that's how I approach at least the coffee they get out of this. Ideally something more.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Thank you, John. Next question's for you, Eva. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. It's not on the list of questions, but it's in the list of my questions here, which is, so often when we're going through this career transition, there's a bit of a fixation on what do I do? What am I? You're defined by the job. You're defined by that last career you held. And yeah, from what I've heard from all of you today, but I'm going to ask you specifically on this one, Eva, as you make the leap towards looking at the skills you bring, the experience you bring, and being able to reframe yourself around, I'm capable of a lot of different things, and these are my skill sets. Could you walk through a little bit your journey on that in terms of looking at yourself from an energy professional that fit into a certain slot versus I can do just about anything? Here's what my skills are.
Well, because I'm a mom, so the reality is, you tell your children, you can do anything, but you have to work at it. You have to do the work. I want $1 million. Great. What are you going to do about it, right? Wanting something isn't enough. You got to work your ass off to get there. And that's the reality. And so when the transition happens, whether it's your choice or not, there's a person I follow. His name's Tom Bilyeu. He's an entrepreneur. And what he says is that what's important about your narrative is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And that has everything to do with your narrative, the stories that you tell yourself to justify behavior, and what you think about yourself, with your self-esteem, and whether you're capable of doing something or not. And when you're down, like you've been laid off, you basically had your ass handed to you, right? And it wasn't your choice. And fine, you can make someone else accountable, you can blame, but now what? Now what? What are you going to do? Right? What are your concerns? So now it turns into, like, for me, it's scientific problem solving, right? Okay, you know, I need to eat, I need to pay rent, I need, you know, fuel in my car. Well, how are you going to solve those problems, right? And how you speak to yourself is such a big and integral part of understanding what you're capable of. And until you fix that conversation with yourself into something that's empowering, you're not going to get very far. So find professional help, go to counseling, find some friends, go and like rag on stuff and just get it all out so that you're not carrying it with you everywhere. Actually resolve the problems and the ruminations that you've got in your head so that you can put them in your previous chapter and open the book and start writing a new chapter. And until that happens, the transition can't actually happen and the transformation doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's really inspiring and great, fantastic advice. I think be able to let that stuff go. And yeah, any of us that have been through the receiving end of a layoff notice have been there in terms of those feelings you got to get rid of before you can move forward. What the last question that just popped in there, I'm going to sort of reframe it a little bit. So there's some folks that have been doing a lot of different things. This individual's indicated they've been through 3 recessions. This is the first one that they haven't been able to make it through and are sort of trying to make their pivot. And the focus was, you know, I'm looking at being a technical writer. Is there demand for this? But I'll broaden this out. There's so many times where there's roles that tap into the skill set. You know, I've done technical training work, now I want to be a technical writer, or I've been doing this kind of work in IT and now perhaps something else or whatever. As you start looking at different roles and skill sets, any advice with respect, and I'll open this to anyone, if the first one put up their hand, if you will, was you start looking at your skill sets and trying to figure out, is there actually demand for this? Is there actually demand for what I want to do? Any advice on where to find out that information? Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And just to build a little bit on what Eva said there, that I mean, when we were working downtown, we were all operating as professional problem solvers. So we're already really good at that. So let's just build on that. In terms of technical writing, that's sort of all the oil and gas, the energy adjacent jobs currently that I'm operating in are really looking for that technical understanding and that technical support. And I know it's not our standard course of operation, but looking at groups like Emissions Reduction Alberta, the Innovation Alberta Group, some of the Alberta funds, and from Canada as well, there's a significant amount of money in the attempts to help people pivot, help people transition into new areas that are adjacent to what you've already been doing. There's people looking, there's funding for people that can write papers on understanding sequestration from a geological point of view, from a fracture induction point of view. There's a lot of money floating around right now for that because of COVID, because of the price of oil, and that's a opportunity that we don't normally tap into as individual professionals, that we leave to the company, but it is absolutely viable for all of us. Thanks.
Great. Anyone else? Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, I agree with that. And to broaden it out of the technical writing sphere, I think if anybody's looking at a particular skill set or a particular, you know, job that they want, the question is, you know, what's the pain point and what is, you know, where would my skill sets fit? And so asking that question to your network, for example, asking that question to whatever company or organization is in that realm is what is your pain points and how can my skills help solve some of those pain points that might be achieved or that might be felt. And I'll just add a little bit to that. Nobody, myself included, anybody in this entire world has everything figured out. We're all just messes who, you know, are going through life and we don't know. And so to not know is okay. And so say, for example, using the technical writer example, you know, maybe there's a pain point for a particular organization in an area that you don't have the skill set in. Well, you're still a technical writer and you still have other skills that you can generate to use that. You know, you probably probably know how to research, you probably know how to leverage your network to ask, you know, other people, how do I write about this particular topic? It's okay to not know everything and to still, you know, venture into that that sort of a job or career or skill set.
Great. Anyone else on this one? Go ahead, Eva.
Just another way to kind of look at the availability of positions is just to not even look at adjacent like verticals, but actually see, you know, who's thriving right now. And if you look, you know, like healthcare, education, you know, and healthcare is so broad. I mean, like you're going from like dentists to physiotherapists to occupational therapists and speech language pathologists, everybody, right? And the reality is they're always looking for someone to write content for them. Everyone's so busy, they have no time, you know, and with all the work, the reality is they're looking for people. So find people in your network that are not just in the adjacent verticals, but are in the thriving places. And they're probably like social friends as opposed to work colleagues, and take them out for coffee and see how those systems work. And the more that you learn, the more that you can apply what your skills are to figure out what you can bring.
Yeah, well, that's great. I didn't want to ignore this question. It's one in here that is a bit delicate. There's an individual who's asked a question about, you know, they're a visible minority, they've struggled, they've knocked on doors, they believe they've done a lot of that networking, and they've had, you know, they've had a challenging experience, and I think what's often not seen or heard is that it's very, very challenging across the board right now. We've got a record unemployment rate here in Calgary. We've got a lot of other things going on, but I didn't want to necessarily make a blanket statement that, you know, you're not dealing with those systemic issues in some cases. I think that would be a little bit unfair and naive. But could one of you sort of speak on the experience of coming from somewhere else and dealing with potentially these types of issues? Sure, back to you, Eva.
Yeah, I grew up in a place where it wasn't really like I was one of 5 families that were white. You know, the goal of my parents as immigrants was to raise children that spoke English without an accent and eat lots of North American foods because that would somehow make my life easier. As I've grown into who I am and what my identity really is and what my beliefs are, there's always room for the best at the top. You know, at the very top, there's always room for the best. So if you're the best at what you do, and then you're not going to have an issue. If you're struggling, you have to figure out where the vulnerabilities are in your skill sets to figure out why you're not getting the traction that you believe that you are, you know, ready for. And if you're not setting yourself up and lining yourself up for the opportunity, it's kind of like when a bus comes by. Do you have the right change to get on? Like that's the fare, right? And if you're using your race, your accent, the way that you look, your ethnicity, and your cultural background, and you're diminishing who you are, that really comes off as insecurity when it comes to interactions with others. So I highly recommend, like, you know, going to Toastmasters or having conversations with people who are outside of your, you know, beliefs, your spectrum, your vertical, so you can actually exchange ideas and not escalate and practice like social skills. Because at the end of the day, that has everything to do with what you present and how you present yourself.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Eva. I didn't want to leave that one unaddressed. One more question before we move towards the wrap up on this one. There are a lot of questions for the entrepreneurs today. How did you go through the process of evaluating risk, reward, viability, outside resources, those kinds of questions? Ross, I haven't called on you in a while. Did you want to perhaps take that one on?
Sure. I mean, mildly, I would do it very similarly how an oil and gas project is assessed in its risk, reward, and viability. I'm hoping that I mean, there's a good amount of project managers and engineers and geoscientists and geologists here that I'm sure have a lot of those skills and are able to make those decisions. Like there's a lot of like, even just online resources like Statista, you can see the growth and changes of an industry and how it's growing or shrinking or what's going on there. I think there's a lot of kind of just self-understanding of seeing how the market's changing and trending, looking at the stock market, seeing if technology stocks are increasing or if healthcare stocks are increasing or whatnot. There's a million resources to see what industries are either growing or not growing. And then using, I don't know, I feel like there should a lot of technical competent people here that should be able to understand those, put those things together. If not, I think one of the key people that I missed out on my business in the first year was an accountant. And if I had partnered with an accountant, I probably would have been a little farther than where I am today. So there's probably somebody in your network that has an ability to assess risk and reward, that you can kind of lean on those skills, learn those skills if you don't have them already. Again, a million resources online to get you through those. Economics teachings and stuff like that you can learn online really easily, getting the basics and then building from there. Yeah.
John, I'm going to actually pick on you on this one as well, because you've been both an entrepreneur and you've taken various careers over the years. How did you go through that evaluation of risk reward viability and any pitfalls to think about?
For myself, I always have a clear picture on where I want to be and where I am now. I'm always self-aware a lot. I even resonate with Eva. I was very cautious about and sensitive about my accent until someone told that's a beautiful accent. I was like, well, that's how inside my head. So thank you, Eva. And I've been to Toastmasters as well. But if I know where I want to be and where I am, that's essentially, now you just need to find that gap analysis and trace that path. Am I looking for $1 million opportunity? Am I looking to break minimum wage so I can pay my bills and keep plowing on this? Am I looking to retire in 3 years? So you need to know what you want, because it's much easier to chase what you want versus just wandering aimless, trying to figure out life and going just one obstacle after the other. So once you know what you want, you need to define how unique is that? Is that the only person that has that idea, or you're competing in a Red Sea full of sharks? Because that's going to make the difference. When I went to my business was, let's do something that no one else is doing, and then we can charge whatever we want. But the other thing as well was, I don't want to be selling my time, because that's non-scalable. I only have 8 hours a day or 24 hours a day if you want to work that hard to sell. So how are you going to build something that makes money for you, not you making money for yourself? So if you can answer those questions, now you're not discussing how am I going to succeed, but how this engine that I put to create money for me, or to create those resources for me, to drive me towards my future, is going to succeed. And I think that's what Ross mentioned, like we're all very prone to analyze other people's problems. And if you externalize that, that's how I do. I have this goal, I have this process, I have this project, I have this engine. How this engine is going to be successful, how this project is going to be successful. And I can be objective, because I'm not talking about myself. Because if I talk about myself, then all my fears and all my everything I over or underestimate about myself is going to come into play. But if I take that objective approach, and if you want to have a business, you need that, because you'll be hiring and firing people and making decisions that are going to affect your life and other people. And again, if you let that creep into your mind, you're going to be, at the best, under heavy analysis paralysis scenario. At the worst, you're going to be making wrong decisions because you have the wrong motivation. So essentially, measure what you have. As Ross was saying, like, there are numbers everywhere. I'm not a number guy. I like data-driven decisions. Find the numbers, decide what you want. Everything else just comes into place, because we all have those skills to figure out those. You may not have skills to define $1 billion opportunity, but then recalibrate what you want to, what you can achieve as well.
Fantastic advice. Excellent. So we're about 10 minutes away from the next section of the panel where you'll actually have breakout rooms and get a chance to interact in a much more smaller setting with each one of these panels in a different breakout room. But before we go there, I just want to ask each of you, I'll call on each one of you to answer one really critical question. What would you be your top tip to people that are sort of going through their pivot and transition at this time? And I'm going to go in the opposite order I went through when I called on everyone. So Eva, I'm going to call on you first. What's your top tip for people as they're going through this transition and pivot?
Really dig deep into self-awareness, why you're feeling the emotions that you're feeling. If you're feeling insecure, why, figure out what those triggers are. Your self-awareness is everything. And along with the self-awareness piece comes the limiting beliefs piece. Often what happens when people transition into entrepreneurship is they know that other people have done it before, but they don't know how they're going to do it. And the whole point is, why not you? Right? Why not? And so just really dig deep on those pieces and do the work.
Great, thank you. John, over to you. Your top tip.
Thank you. I'll build on top of Eva's because hers is close to mine. With that self-awareness, you need to understand what value you bring to the table. And the value is not the job you do. It's like, what can I do? And I love Eva's story. Like, she managed projects, so she can manage a budget of something that's probably in the $1,000, maybe $1 million. We all know things, and those things are not defined by the job. We put those things together to use in a job, but you can use in other jobs as well. The other side of the equation, in particular in this forum, is what I call golden handcuffs. Remember when I said there is the motions, sideways movement? If you always try to move to a higher salary, you're screwed. Sorry, because the salaries companies are paying now are not salaries they were paying in 2013 or 2004. So if your only motivation is salary, you need to dig really deep into that self-awareness. What's important to you? And to me is, am I happy? Am I motivated? I want to be able to explain to my kids what I do at my job. And I'm proud to say now I save lives. John, what do you do? I save lives. That's what my company does. When I was in oil and gas, what do you do? I keep your house warm through winter. There is value in there, but you need to understand that what you want is more important, and what you bring to the table and how those two are going to align. That's how you're going to be successful, if you can align those two.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Greg, over to you. The floor is yours.
What I really like is I had a list of different suggestions in case people stole mine, and so far 2 have been stolen, so that's great. I'm glad we're all on the same page. That's fantastic. Really, my biggest one, my first, was is seeing how you fit into your current company, being truly aware of where you are or where you were just a little while ago, so that you can see what role you played, where you fit in, what are those non-direct technical skill sets that you can transfer elsewhere. People that are getting the most attention nowadays are people that are more of a generalist, less of an expert. If you only have one really high competent skill to offer, it's slightly less attractive, seems to be, from my point of view. And being aware where you fit helps you take those skills and take them elsewhere. Machine learning, for example, people understand machine learning, but not how to apply it in day-to-day activities, and they need experts. They need people like us to go and say, this is how I think it makes sense to use machine learning, but you need to understand how to use it first. So that little additional skill set where you fit into your day-to-day job will help transfer into the next step.
Great, thank you, Greg. Nick, over to you. Your advice.
Well, like Greg said, I think my first 3 were stolen as well, so I'm going to dig deep on this one. I understand, like, if you've got a career right now and you're looking to pivot, and off the top, I was just going to say, don't say no to any opportunities. If you think it's going to get you somewhere, go for it. Now, I know that's not always financially viable. Everybody can't just go back to school. Everybody can't just start up a business from scratch, right? But I think there's a lot of other ways you can go about it, through joining groups, volunteering. And that's a couple of things that I really try to do. And being self-aware of my position when I got to Calgary, I didn't know a soul in Calgary, not one person. So networking was my biggest thing that I wanted to do. So, and I already mentioned I'm an introvert. So I forced myself to go to all these events all the time and just not only meet people and grow my network, but on top of that, learn more about the industry that I was trying to get into, that I thought was really cool and exciting and a big, bright future in it, but I really didn't know too much about. So just putting yourself out there on your spare time, doing things you can do for free, just to understand where you can maybe fit in, and then bringing that self-awareness that everybody's been talking about, and understanding what on my resume from my past positions, where can I connect that to where I want to go, and how can I leverage that?
Wonderful. Thank you, Nick. Jessica, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, kind of building on all of it, I guess. My tip would be, if you have an idea of where you want to go, say you've identified, that sort of thing, you've done your self-awareness, you understand what you want to do, you have to take a risk. And even if it's a small risk, you need to take a risk in order to be successful if you truly want to achieve that. And risks mean you also have to be okay with the unknown. Resilience is built when you take a risk and you make a mistake. And when you don't make a mistake, that's when you really, start to achieve your goals. And mistakes are great. They're all part of the learning journey. So even if it's small, it's if you're starting your own business, one contract, on the side that you work on the evenings and the weekends, in order to try to get there, it's you got to put yourself out there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. And the final word goes to you, Ross.
Awesome. I'm going to go mildly sideways from everybody else's, but all of them very good suggestions. And I do definitely agree with the risk. Try and be risky when you can. But for me, I would say try and be way more creative than you are. There's so much opportunity when you look at something even more complex than what you're looking at. When I wanted to work in the distilling industry, I thought of opening a distillery because I wasn't creative enough to figure out that there's all these other derivative industries associated with distilling. There's the manufacturers of stills, there's aluminum can production, there's a billion other industries that are related. And so if there's something that you want, be more creative in what you're actually looking for, and there's going to open up a lot more opportunity there. And then lastly, if Calgary is the place you want to live, look creatively at what's going on there. Look at the values of that. Like, we have an incredible agriculture sector, we have the mountains, we have corporate infrastructure, things like that. So be creative with your thoughts and drive that where you can look for different opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Ross. And to the panelists, sometimes I think I've got the best job in the world. I just get to show up here and talk to really, really smart and inspiring people like you. So thank you. I learned a lot today, and I took notes, and this was fantastic. So for all of you, I'm going to pass it back here to Brianne, who will sort of give you the instructions on how to move where you're heading to next. So back to you, Brianne.
Thank you so much, Bimal, and thank you for moderating this session. It's been great to get a flavor of the stories of each of you and hear some fantastic questions from our audience. We are now moving immediately into the breakout rooms. So when I end this session, click on the screen in the auditorium and then select the panelist whose breakout room you would like to join. This is your opportunity to hear more details about someone's career transition story and to ask questions of them specifically. Just a reminder that all of the sessions are recorded. So if you want to hear from more than one person, keep in mind you can watch those recorded sessions tomorrow, because you do have to pick one, unfortunately, at this time. So again, the breakout sessions will begin right away. So click the screen in the auditorium and select the panelist whose breakout room you would like to join. Thank you very much.